My dearest brothers and sisters. This is Hakann speaking. I greet you in peace and love. I would like to give you a big picture overview of what is going on in the world right now. For millennia, those people who were service to self or who were closer to separation consciousness, benefited from energetics that worked as a tailwind. They generally became rich and successful and famous. Meanwhile, service to other people or those who were closer to unity consciousness, were often hindered by energetics that worked as a headwind. They generally struggled and didn't get a lot of help or recognition. Sometimes they were even murdered, particularly if they pointed out what was really going on, or if they tried to bring technologies to the people that would free them from their dependence on the system. The people that have been held up as great philanthropists by the mainstream media are generally at best morally gray, and are often downright evil. The mainstream media often presents inverted information, or in plain English, what they say is often the opposite of actual truth. We had the 2023 spring equinox last week. You could think of that as the turning point when service to self people are now facing an energetic headwind, and where service to self people are now facing an energetic tailwind. I know many of you have tried demonstrating or starting projects or initiatives in the past, and from your perspective, that has had little to no effect. In the future, you will find that you will experience more success and ease and grace if you stand up and do something that benefits your brothers and sisters. I am not saying that you will always succeed, but I am saying that you will experience energetic tailwinds, as opposed to the energetic headwinds that you might have been used to. The dark controllers still have some degree of power, and there is still a little bit of time until they are removed from power and arrested. But the energetics of your world have irrevocably turned against them, or to keep using the wind metaphor, they will now experience headwinds instead of tailwinds. Very broadly speaking, there's still a group of dark controllers, who still have some amount of power left, but the energetics are turning against them. There are a group of gray hats, who are sometimes called white hats or the Alliance, mostly consisting of good-hearted or mostly good-hearted people in the military and special services and in some governments. The gray hats have taken some, but less tangible and visible action against the dark controllers than we had hoped. Again, we would like to invite them to take more open and visible and tangible actions, because the energetics right now absolutely support that. Not to mention that there will be a time when all is revealed, and at that point the gray hats will have to explain why they didn't just arrest the dark controllers much sooner, and it will become more difficult to explain every day that passes. Because every day that passes, more people die and get tortured and otherwise suffer. Including children. We are already supporting the gray hats in the actions against the dark controllers that they are taking, and in their efforts to introduce new technologies that help average people. Gray hats, if you want to step up these efforts, you know how to contact us. The gray hats would love to live in a brighter and better world, but they are in practice resistant to actually taking certain steps that would bring that about, such as visibly arresting the dark controllers. Unfortunately, the same is true for a huge part of humanity. Most people aren't inherently evil, but most people are scared and overworked and exhausted and traumatized, and are therefore in survival mode. And people in survival mode want comfort and want things to remain the same. These people generally keep their heads down and try to create stability for themselves and aren't going to take on the additional burden of protesting against the government, or trying to create a new kind of society. There is also a huge group of beings who simply have no soul. In general, these beings are not evil. To an average observer, they just look like average people who just go along with whatever the crowd says or does. I am not saying that literally everyone who goes along with the crowds has no soul, but this is true in a lot of cases. In the plan we had years ago, average people would have already been benefiting from healing and free energy and matter printing technologies in 2023, which would have hopefully gotten them out of survival mode, so that by now a huge part of the population would be actively working on constructing a new kind of society. The gray hats have not introduced these technologies as quickly as we had hoped. So now the angelic realms and ascended masters and several galactic races have stepped up and have been sending a lot of love and light and healing to Earth. If you felt happier or lighter or less burdened or like things bothered you less, then probably that was caused in part by these efforts. Fortunately, there is a group of light workers and otherwise activated people who are working towards a new and better future. And their light and courage will likely prove to be contagious over the coming months. Moreover, the energetic tailwinds for the service to others side and the energetic headwinds for the service to self side will continue to strengthen. The situation will become more and more untenable for the dark controllers, and easier for light workers. Common people will be nudged more and more to heal and integrate their old pain and to awaken. Awakening is easier than ever since the last spring equinox, and we expect lots more people to awaken this year and the following years. However, there will be people who simply refuse to awaken or who are simply not ready on a soul level to awaken. Life will gradually become harder and harder for these people, until they either become so uncomfortable that awakening becomes the easier path. Or they could transition to the afterlife, what you call dying. Currently I am still sticking to my prediction that before the end of 2026 your lives will be much better than they are now, and likely we will have made physical contact with at least those people who are ready for that. These things can also certainly happen earlier than the end of 2026, but the fact remains that at this point in time, most people still do not want to awaken, because remaining asleep is easier in the very short term. And thus, this process is still going to take some time. That said, you absolutely will be free. The outcome here is not in doubt, only how long it will take to get there. And that depends on the choices that Earth humans make. I do very much look forward to the day that I will be able to offer my dear Earth Lightworker friends a physical handshake or hug. I feel a kinship with many of you, and it is frankly hard to wait to actually meet up with you. I would love to show you around and be able to talk face to face with you and laugh and dance and share our foods and exchange songs and stories and experiences. That said, likely there is still a bit of time before we will physically meet up, depending on the choices that Earth humans make. Ultimately it's still up to the Grey Hats to arrest the Dark Controllers. We still only plan to step in more directly if it's absolutely necessary, because otherwise the upcoming love-based society may not last. Last time we Galactics tried creating and handing Earth humans a love-based society was during Atlantis, and Atlantis fell. We don't wish to repeat that. If Earth humans wish to live in a love-based society, then Earth humans should arrest the Dark Controllers and actually construct this love-based society themselves. That said, this is easier than it perhaps sounds, because we are supporting you in subtle ways, and the current Earth energetics are very much supporting those steps. I would like to thank you very, very much that you have held on to the light, even though these times have been so slow and painful and lonely for many of you. If light workers hadn't held on to the light, more than half of humanity probably would have been exterminated right now, and the rest of humanity would have been trapped in slavery, not in this current type of subtle slavery, but in blatant work for us and shut up or we turn off your ability to buy food slavery. Therefore, thank you so very much for holding on to the light, on behalf of me and on behalf of countless other beings in the galaxy who are benefiting from your efforts. Thanks to you, Earth is going to slowly transform into a paradise. While the Grey Hats, White Hats may be moving slower than we had hoped, the light workers have been exceeding our already very high expectations. If you had asked me 30 years ago what Earth would look like in 2023 under the scenario that the Grey Hats, White Hats aren't taking much visible action, then I would have predicted a far worse situation than you are in now, namely billions of deaths from either a third world war or an engineered famine or from certain intentionally administered toxins, followed by a complete enslavement of the remaining humans. I get that your current situation isn't great, but it's much better than it very easily could have been. And to a huge extent, this is thanks to the amazing efforts of light workers. You are doing great. We're all very proud of you and grateful to you. Some of you may feel that your efforts and your suffering have been in vain and unrecognized. Well, to a large extent they have been unrecognized by your fellow Earthlings. But to us Galactics, and to the angels in the lighted realms, you light workers are superheroes, and you have succeeded in keeping the light alive during an intensely dark and hard period. The situation on Earth would be much, much worse if you had not been there. Thank you so much for this. Your future is unbelievably bright, and filled with more love and ease and grace and beautiful sights than you can probably imagine right now. Your lives should in general slowly start to become easier from here on out. I am not saying that heaven on earth will be here tomorrow, or that all hardships are over starting today. But your lives should in general start improving from here on out. Your star brother, Hakann.